Hi, I'm Chloe Walsh, and welcome to my senior TED Talk. So I know all of you have fears, including me, and they're quite overwhelming, I know. But none of these are even close to classifying as phobias. Yes, phobias always need treatment, but most phobics never receive it and never go out looking for it. So my research question is, how can the application of virtual reality affect the mindsets of patients suffering from phobias? So in essence, can virtual reality exposure therapy help patients overcome symptoms and gain back control from their debilitating illness? So I'm just going to start out with, what are phobias? So phobias are an anxiety disorder. It is defined by an excessive fear of an object or situation. The onset is typically rapid and is present for 6 months or greater. With phobias or phobics, they go to great lengths to avoid their fears at greater lengths than the actual dangers posed. So when the fear cannot be avoided, the affected person experiences significant distress, and major phobias fit into more specific categories and have a lot more research on them. So things like arachnophobia and aerophobia, which is the fear of flying, have a lot more research on them than things such as xenophobia, which is the fear of dogs, because it's just not as known. And when most people hear the fear of dogs, they're like, why would you be scared of a dog? Right? Yeah. Okay, so I also want to just lay down the basis of what is exposure therapy. So exposure therapy was developed specifically for anxiety disorders. Exposure therapy involves exposing the patient to the anxiety source, usually pretty slowly, and usually it's in the context without the intention to cause any danger. It is thought and proven for some disorders to help overcome the stress and anxiety. I really like this picture. It says exposure therapy expose patients to things they fear and avoid through repeated exposures, anxiety lessens, because they habituate to things they feared. So really it's trying to get phobics to stop avoiding the problem, because that's really one of the main problems. And this timeline shows, this is in Vivo, which is real life exposure therapy, but this is kind of just a good graph. So she gets really slowly introduced to like a picture of a spider, and then a fake spider, and then she gets to hold the fake spider, and then she sees a real spider. So yeah. Okay, so as you may have thought, phobics' daily lives are extremely different to normal daily lives, or even compared to people with other anxiety disorders like PTSD. The specific fear is a constant thought and worry. To phobics, they cannot go anywhere without the fear that they will have to face their dreaded phobia. To most phobics, avoiding situation that risks triggering that phobia altogether is the best way to go. So that is usually what they do, which also means that they avoid getting treatment, because seeking treatment means that they will have to face that fear. I really liked this as well, just because it just shows the thought process of a lot of anxiety disorders. So when phobics are triggered, they can be triggered without even directly facing their fear. But when faced with their fear, they can faint, experience panic attacks, nausea, sweating, overwhelming anxiety, rapid heartbeat, chills, hot flushes, and much more. So it is pretty debilitating when they actually experience their phobia. So I also wanted to touch on the history of psychology related to VR. So how in the heck did these two things connect, and why are they being used together now? So really it started when the veterans came back from Iraq in the early 2000s. So due to them returning from Iraq, there were many veterans who had PTSD, and the military really wanted to start funding something that was different, and so they started with virtual reality exposure therapy. And actually that picture is pretty old, and VR headsets have really advanced from then even. Yeah, so after that, it kind of started touching into other developers starting simulations. This simulation is like a public place simulation for people with a social phobia. So yeah, they started with very low quality, obviously, but it started advancing slowly. They also started to measure how it affects people when they are using VR exposure therapy versus things like in vivo. And like I said, VR has really advanced to things like the Vive, which is my personal favorite. Okay, and so I wanted to, I wanted to explain certain phobias I really researched in depth. And so I wanted to start off with Obo Phobia, and that is the fear of flying. And it's really the fear of getting into a bad situation with flying, so a plane crash, anything really like that where they're going to be hurt. So people with this phobia are pretty much scared of planes altogether, anything about planes, the airport, everything. So this was the demographics from one of my studies I looked at. I really thought this was really interesting because you can see that for the female, 9 females had other specific phobias along with Obo Phobia, and 7 males had other phobias, which was very interesting to me, as well as they had panic disorders and other diagnoses that were really related to having this anxiety disorder. And this is also a very easy graph to read. So this dotted line is the VR group, and you can see this is pre, so this is before they had treatment. So this is their fear flying rating. It's very high, obviously, before they start treatment, and then it goes down significantly, and it goes down just a little bit in the after 6 months. Same with these two. Yeah. Oops. Sorry. Arachnophobia is also what I wanted to touch on. It is the fear of spiders. It's really the fear of spiders being invasive. So yeah, so things like bites, spiders crawling into mouths. I know that was like a really big thing at like DHS. A lot of people were scared of that. I don't know why. Yeah, so this phobia was actually one of the first to work with virtual reality exposure therapy because it is much more common than other phobias and is much more well known. It's not as taboo. So in this, you can see the variants explained. So yeah, so BSQ beliefs, this is a assessment, that's like a self-assessment. So the beliefs you can see pre and then post, it goes down. So basically their stress level is going down. So their belief that this phobia is going to like hurt them, if they encounter it's going to hurt them, it has gone down significantly. Yeah, so that's really what I was looking at, those two, as well as the triggering credibility and immersion. You can see that post, the immersion went up because they feel more immersed into the virtual reality setting. So, yeah. Okay, a very important one I'd like to also mention is acrophobia, or the fear of heights, specifically falling from heights. There are a lot of developers who have worked on simulations that do cross this. There's something called the plank simulation. Now, I know we did a bit of that at the Powerhouse, and to people who didn't have phobias, who didn't have acrophobia, who still could not complete the simulation. Most people couldn't. So yeah, that's very interesting. So this is showing just the anxiety. This is in vivo, which again is real life, and then this is in virtual, which is VR. So this is pre, and then you can see that just the anxiety level, even pre is below in vivo, and then post is also very low. Okay. And then this table just shows kind of the way they process exposure therapy. And then those graphs over there, they really show the fear. That's what those graphs really focus on. The fear of falling, the fear of heights, and how that is being affected in exposure therapy. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about social phobias, also called social anxiety disorder. I know most people don't think this is a phobia, but it is also a phobia. So social phobia is when you are scared of social situations. So this is also very easy to read. The social phobia scale, you can see that people before, they were at a 14.2 at a mean. In the follow-up, it was significantly lower, and it's the same with all three, which is very good to see. And then the same with these guys. You can see initial, it's obviously very high. Baseline, it gets a little bit lower. Intervention, it drops. But it also goes very higher up in the follow-up. But it goes down in the follow-up too, which is also interesting. So the last one I like to talk about is xenophobia, which is the fear of dogs. This fear usually stems from a childhood experience. It is the fear of getting attacked by a dog. Both these graphs show kind of the difference of the anxiety levels of people with xenophobia compared to other phobias. So their score ranges are a lot lower. So as you can see, they're more in the 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9. That's their anxiety score, instead of being much higher. And you can also see their virtual dog apprehension is 1, which is the lowest, and instead of like 3, there's only 1 person in 3. Okay, so what? Why does this matter? Only 3% of phobias are treated, so because of the overwhelming fear these people experience. So really, it's important that everyone knows about this so that we can get the word out to really get people to experiment with other forms of psychology and treatment for different mental disorders, because really we're only touching on mental disorders now, really. So we can always evolve treatment to really get that relief to phobics and have them gain more control within themselves. And that's really my goal, because I just know it's so overwhelming for them. That's why people don't seek treatment, because that's the scariest thing of all, it's treatment. Okay, and then my conclusion. So we can all spread the word. There are many companies doing this, but they are all technology-leaning companies that have gone into psychology. Really what I see needing to happen is for local clinics and local therapists to get the word about this, and maybe even join up with people who are more interested in technology and who have more interest in that, and that can really cross over, and so that they can really help people out. And I also just wanted to leave you guys with these 2 quotes, because I know everyone obviously has fears. So, the fear of facing your fears is harder to overcome than the fear itself, which is true for everyone, especially phobics, because obviously they're extremely fearful. And then face everything and rise. So, basically, always face your fears, guys. Always. Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right.
we're going to go into the question and answer portion now. So audience members, please feel free to ask questions. Panelists, you guys as well. Yeah, so do you think that virtual reality is more effective than in vivo, and if so, why? Or like, what are the advantages to it?
I think it is more effective in many ways. First of all, it's more effective in getting phobics to even seek treatment because it's a new technology. It's something that people are interested in. If they've never tried virtual reality and they get a opportunity to try it, most people are going to take that opportunity. And also, it's they know that they're in a virtual environment. If they start to have a panic attack and start to get triggered, the therapist can just take that right off of their head and they can calm right down. So they're not in an environment where it's they know it's real. Even though when usually they do get very immersed to where they think it's pretty real, but they still have that realistic idea.
It's like a safety valve.
Yeah. Yeah. Megan.
What are the specific kinds of steps that we can take to like get those words out?
Like things like just talking to like your personal therapist. Like I was even talking to my therapist about this, and she was very interested in having River Sage actually do it. Which even just taking that one step just to talk about it with someone is really like, oh wow, we could do that. Like, that sounds really cool. That sounds like it would help a lot of people. I think just that is really helpful.
Is there like specialized, like if I were a counselor, which I'm obviously not, but if I were and I heard about this and I'm interested in it, like, is there specialized training out there that they have to go through in order to use this stuff? And like, yeah.
How much does it cost?
Right.
Yeah. So usually there isn't specialized training. People should be trained on how to use VR with other people and how to direct people through VR. Like I had to learn how to do that. I think all people who are directing people should. But really, other than that, they just have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And yeah, I mean, VR equipment is pretty expensive, especially for the more realistic stuff. It's like $500 for a headset, but yeah.
That's not too
So, in your experience doing VR, which I know you have great experience doing it,
Yeah.
what do you think about this, like the HTC Vive has a cutoff in age for kids to use VR, and there's probably some research behind that, but they say something like no one younger than 12 should use VR. So what's your personal opinion about that?
My opinion about that is really that I think that it can be harmful to kids. I haven't really researched that in depth, but from what I've read when I worked at the Powerhouse, it was all pretty negative for them. And I would also be kind of nervous if I had a child in the headset, to be honest with you, because, I don't know, it's...
Why is it more negative for 12-year-olds? Or like for children?
Well, it's just the, part of it is the immersion. It's very lifelike, and depending on the child, it can seem like it's real life. And also it's just pretty bad for their brain. It's not very good for them to be that close to a screen. Yeah, there are a lot of like different like research claims, but
So it's like vision stuff and then
yeah,
like, okay.
there's a lot of parts though.
Other questions? Panel? You guys are awfully quiet back there.
What was your first experience with virtual reality, and how would you say that it's inspired you to make this your senior project?
I guess my first like real experience was with my mentor Mike. I did my internship with him, and I got to go through a lot of different simulations, and one of them was the plank experience, where you're on top of a tall building, and that's where. And we also did that at the powerhouse, where you have to actually walk across a physical plank, but you're in virtual reality, and that was just like very interesting to me because I just jumped right off, but like other people, they'll just be so scared. It's that really made me want to research it more.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you very much, Chloe. We're gonna stop questioning there.